Special treat for you today, a 2013 Mercedes-Benz AMG C63 P31 Rentec. That's a lot to say. I think I said it 6 times and it didn't roll off the tongue correctly. This is a special car to me. And, you know, when you deal with a lot of car people, you know, I like the car people that make their car their own. Some people buy a car and they don't do any changes to it. Overall, I make changes to my cars. This one, I spent a lot of time making changes to it to get it to where it is. Just to give you an idea of the platforms of these cars, you had the 08 to 011 AMGs, and they did a whole refresh on the car in 2012, and they did a phenomenal job in the 204, and they changed the whole interior and the styling and the packages they offered. You know, the 08 to 011, there was a head problem with the head bolts, and it caused head gasket problems and coolant to go into the internals, and some people blew their motors. They did change that in 2012, so that made me a little nervous. I was looking at a 2010, but I went with the 13, and as you already know from other videos, I do like 4-door cars. I just like the 4-door look. I'm not a fan of the new C63, the way it looks from the back, the side. I don't like the navigation. That's why I didn't buy a new one. And I wanted a P31 package. AMG naturally aspirated V8. They're going away, as you know, to the bi-turbos because of emissions. I think the naturally aspirated V8s are fun, and anyone who's owned one knows what I'm talking about. So this car, like I said, is very special. It took a lot of time. Just to give you a little background, you know, as far as the external, you know, it's got the blackout package put on it, exhaust tips blacked out, Vaseline rims, 20-inch tires all the way around, Toyo tires. Lowered springs that are lighter weight than the stock, as well as improve the handling, control arm work, suspension work. The handling's improved big time. As far as the motor, I started with the ECU upgrade with Rentec. Adds about 66 horsepower, conservatively 50. And I wanted to do one thing at a time to see what the power increases were throughout the whole power band. And that is the biggest increase. They tell you in articles, you want to flush the ECU in the C63, you're going to have an SLS AMG, and they're not lying. Throughout the whole power band, and torque is increased in this vehicle just with that. The second thing I did was the carbon airbox. Adds 10 horsepower. Really didn't notice a difference. The airflow sounds different, sounds better. And as far as a cosmetic piece on the newer models, they are doing the carbon fiber motors as an option. It looks like a great cosmetic piece on the vehicle. But I think it did add some horsepower. The third thing I did is the throttle body, Rentec throttle body, that adds about 15 to 20 horsepower. Did notice better throttle response and more power with that. That was a nice upgrade, not cheap, but why not? And I did an Nissan pulley on the car, adds about 15 to 20 horsepower. Did notice some increase with that. It also has an X pipe, secondary cat removed, modified mufflers, and what they do through Rentec is they just take the mufflers, take all the crap out of them, seal them up. There is probably not as much back pressure. It sounds a lot better. I probably got a little power out of that. But the last thing I want to do, and you know, just some cosmetic pieces are being finished with a rear diffuser, mode carbon rear wing is going on, and the whole car just got the whole front end painted, and the bonnet, and some wrapping of blackout in the front. Just like I said, this place does a phenomenal job as far as painting goes. So the car's almost there. We just got to do the wing and the long tube headers. I'll do a follow-up video more thorough. This is just going to be a short one. We'll see what the car is when it's fully done with the long tube headers. So we're talking numbers. This car goes 0 to 60 from the factory 3.9, 12.75 mile. Now it's pushing almost 100 more horsepower, probably 570 580 to the engine. You know, 0 to 60, I can't tell you, 3.4, 3.5. Quarter miles under 12. You know, from the factory it shuts off at 174. This is a 200 mile per hour car now. And it weighs 3,649 pounds. The new one weighs, the S weighs almost 4,000, and the sedan weighs 3,850. So it's a lighter car. So let's take this for a spin and see what it can do. You know, the last review I did was the Shelby, and I really love American cars. You know, we'll talk about that, but that's what I owned as a kid, and I used to go to the drag strip with my dad, and my dad used to work on cars and Corvettes and Porsches, and he had a lot of American cars. I had a 67 Cougar for my grandmother, and I restored it, and I used to go to the drag strip and race and street race. So I've been around American cars, but you know, it's different with these AMGs and Porsches and Lambos. But what I like about this car, it's a sleeper. It's not over the top like a Lambo where you go, wow, look at that tool. no offense with guys that own Lambos. I'm looking at one, I'm just not sure. I like cars where people maybe go, hey, that's a nice car, and kind of a subtle look and looks good. This car is just really clean and sharp, and it has that. People do stop me and talk to me about the car. Probably not as much as someone would maybe about a Lambo, but this is different. It is kind of different than what you don't normally see on the road as far as the C63 goes. All right, so we got to set the tone here. We'll go. You got C, Sport, Sport Plus to get maximize the horsepower, and then you got we got Sport Handling Mode. We'll put that in. Let me get a sip of coffee here. I'm all buckled up. And steering set. All right, let's do this. All right. I'll tell you, I haven't driven this car in a long time, and I haven't driven it since everything's been done except out here today by my house. And it's different because the last review I did was the Shelby GT500, and I have a bias towards manual shift and not the paddle shift. Well, let's see here. Jesus. All right. Whoa. Okay. It's just so different because I'm so used to, you know, shifting. Now the 7-speed transmission has gotten some flack. It doesn't respond as well as it should. It doesn't. It's gotten better over the years. I drove a CLK Black Series. That was worse than this. I mean, it's an 8 out of a 10, 8.5. It just doesn't respond as well as it should, in my opinion. But I love BMW and Mercedes guys, and I go to the blogs and I look at some stuff. But you'll see a BMW guy will say, "Well, if that motor was in our car, it would be faster." Well, the fact is, it's not in your car. And yes, BMW likes to claim, which is true, they're 200 pounds lighter, 250 pounds lighter car. But I will say this about AMG. AMG has improved the handling on their cars every year. It's not that far off BMW. And I like some of the styling cues of the BMW. As far as, whoa. I tell you, it goes into the corners so much better now with all the work that's been, wow. Whew. That's awesome. About 6,000 RPMs, 100 miles an hour. Throttle response is phenomenal. As I was saying with the BMW, I like the carbon fiber roof, some of the cues that I think Mercedes should do. But when we talk about the engine, which is half the car to me, Mercedes wins hands down. Number two, the interior of the Mercedes, the luxury, beats BMW hands down. And the reliability of the AMG team, I think they do a better job and they have a slight advantage to BMW. I owned an old BMW and I had a lot of problems with the double clutch transmission at the drag strip. And it broke on me. I just think they're a little more reliable. I will say both brands are doing a disservice to the, to the company because they're developing too many brands. How many C classes do you have now? And when you look at Consumer Reports and you hear reviews, Mercedes or BMW used to offer free maintenance. They took it away. Mercedes is not going to do that. That's why a lot of people lease their cars. Well, they lease because can't afford to buy, but it's probably better to lease the newer Mercedes unless you got a really good mechanic. But overall, in my opinion, with Mercedes, I owned a 95, never had any problems except the water pump. I think they're built like tanks. But the newer models with electrical problems, they have so many brands now. The technology is so advanced that, Mercedes and BMW's kind of lost their, mojo a little bit. Wow. I'll tell you, goes into the corner strong, recovers. Braking's great. Steering straight on. This performance steering wheel is great. Feels great. You can see over the bonnet really good. That's what I like about these C classes. They're just a big motor stuffed into a car. You're just surrounded by this small shell. And you're one with the road. You can see everything. It's great. So, I think, I really like the naturally aspirated V8s. Mercedes and BMW both make good brands, but I just think they need to reevaluate what they're doing for the future. Let's see if we can get some turns here. I mean, it feels so weird because I've been in some American cars lately, but the handling, I drove this before I did all this work. The handling was great anyway. It's great. I mean, it's probably an 8.5. We got a tunnel here. Let's do that. You know, it's got a good sound. I'm a little worried that the long tube headers are going to be insane. But they said only when you get on it, so we'll see. I mean, it just corners beautifully, recovers beautifully. This is faster than my GTC. It's faster. They did a great job. It's just smooth. The torque. I mean, it was fast with 481 horsepower. Corners, goes in, out. You know, you want to compare this to the Shelby. Yeah, the refined interior. You notice that in this car. It's better interior. You know, the torque in the Shelby is far superior, but it's a little more refined. You know, not as bumpy. Goes into the corners the way it's set up now better than the Shelby. It's about 250 pounds less weight than the Shelby. But wow, I mean, I can really go in with confidence. And the Shelby, you know, hey, I pride myself on being a good driver. I went to AMG driving school. I used to street race as a kid, and my dad was a racer guy. You know, but the Shelby, because I haven't driven it in a while, it only had 800 miles on it. You got to get used to it a little bit, and I was just a little nervous when I was last in it. But once I get the feel, I'm confident, because in a car like that, it's the driver that makes the difference. And in a car like this, but especially that car, you just got to get your rhythm down. But I tell you, this, like I said, this car, I spent a lot of time. I'm so happy right now. I like what I'm feeling in the car, the response. I like what I'm seeing, and the engine, you know, was well worth the wait. Take it down to second gear. Oh man, wow. Got a Porsche Cayenne in front of us. It's getting a little nuts, so it's really different, you know. And when I was driving this car, I don't use the manuals that much, but it's just a different feel. You know, I am biased to the manual shifter. All right, let's slow down. We got a tunnel here. Let's see how we do here. It just puts a smile on your face every time. You know, this car might be worth keeping for a while. This is a blast. I mean, this is a blast. Wow. Wow. I'm speechless. Doesn't happen too often. Got another tunnel, but got a lot of traffic here. I mean, just the braking, the response, the throttle response, the cornering, everything is just dialed in. Dialed in. This would be great for street racing. I can't imagine the long tube headers. Wow. Well, I just want to do a quick review on this, and we'll do a follow-up review when we get the long tube headers and the rear wing. Take some shots of it, and maybe get my buddy up here, and then take it out for some runs and see what it really can do. But you know, this has been a project, a long project, and it's almost done. And I appreciate your time.